What is our responsibility to our fellow human beings? Where do we draw the line? This week I had a lesson in that. So yesterday I went to the Chicago Botanical Gardens. Chicago Botanic Gardens. I always call it botanical. I don't know why I call it botanical. Chicago Botanic Gardens. And I've wanted to for a while now. And I realized that through some research, I can actually take the Metro train. And it wasn't that long of a trip. It's straight north. So I did that. I got ready. I got my backpack all set, and I made sure I was 100% ready to go. Sometimes, my shoulder's been acting up. So, long walks all day tend to wear me down. So I was 100%. The weather was perfect. It was beautiful. It was a 78 degrees, partly cloudy in Highland Park where it's at. All right, so I hop on the train and I go. But before I leave, I put on my prayer beads. I bought these prayer beads from a shop down the road. And I believe they're Hindu prayer beads. But for me, it's the closest thing that I'll get to something that symbolizes my spirituality without really buying a team jersey, so to speak. You know what I mean? Quick background. I've always been very spiritual. I've always had interfaith. I've always believed in some sort of higher power, and it ebbed and flowed. I think that it does normally, right, in our lives. We're not born with super big faith, even when we, are raised on it. Sometimes, in spite of being raised on it, we don't really have a lot of faith, and it kind of comes and goes. And it's to be expected that as we grow older, we are more spiritual. And that's where I find myself now. I'm more spiritual now than I've ever been my entire life. My link to God or Ahuvi or the beloved or the all or the universe, whatever you want to call it, that link is getting stronger with me every day. And so I've noticed that the last couple of weeks I've been reading Thomas Merton. I've been reading Richard Rohr. Those are the two biggies. But also, Marcus J. Borg has a great book I'm reading now on Christianity. My quick history of spirituality, a 1-minute tutorial. So I was raised Catholic, and we went to church until we didn't. And I thought as a young man, as a kid, cool, I have Sundays off now, I can sleep in. Both my parents were raised Catholic. My mother went to a Catholic school. I think my dad went to public school. Anyway, so that was around. I never got confirmed, but I was baptized and stuff. I joined the Boy Scouts. Boy Scouts have a great connection with God and spirituality. I had joined a Lutheran, not joined a Lutheran church. I had coached softball in a Lutheran church. And so it's always kind of been there. And I've had a past as a kid. CCD and child and Bible studies and all that stuff. And then right around high school, I looked into more of Eastern philosophy and religion, and I was fascinated by that. I loved it. I love the idea, and like a lot of Westerners do, there's a fascination in the other, right? But I love the idea of Buddhism, of the idea that heaven and hell are right here and not some other place. I thought that was a really interesting way of going about it. And for a long time, I was Eastern. I read Alan Watts. Joseph Campbell helped introduce me to a lot of Eastern Indian, Taoism. Right before I got into the city in 2003, I wrote a lot of about Taoism and the Tao Me, I called it, the God Me connection that I have. Anyway, all that being said, right around college, at a point in my life where I really hit a low emotionally, I renounced God. I told God to fuck off. essentially. I remember walking to my room and pointing to the ceiling and going, yep, that's enough of that. And so it wasn't a coincidence that I became highly intellectualized then. I really focused on a lot more study, mind stuff. Mind was the way that I was going to get past the challenges of life. I was going to vigilantize my life, being hyper-vigilant. All that being said, I've had a up and down. And then as I grew through my 40s, I went through a lot of doubt and fear and worry and just a loss of self. I mean, when you really go through this the right way, I felt like myself was disintegrating. And it was. My first half, the identity I held for myself was coming to pieces, and I didn't know how to put myself together in all of the ways that can be very horrific if you really think about if you physically fell apart and were trying to put yourself back together. But also with the highs as well. You know, there was my 40s have been, and I just turned 49 this past week, and so of course with that comes a little look back on where you've been. So that's why I'm thinking about it a lot more. Anyway, long story short, I get back to the Western religion. I start reading the Bible again, but always with the idea that I'm an outsider. I used to be very ashamed of this term, whether I called myself a weirdo or a freak or whatever it might be. I always felt like I was an outsider. I don't know. There's a number of reasons why. I'm sure there's a bunch of reasons why. And I used to be interested in why. What is it? What is it that I can be that? Now I'm like, okay, yeah, I just think outside the box. I'm not your typical. That's fine. That's cool. So I've always felt very outside. Again, I never really bought a team jersey for a certain religion because I believe in it all. I really do believe that. And what has helped me because I never became an atheist. And I wondered about that. Even though I read Nietzsche and I read Schopenhauer and I read a lot of existentialists, I was wondering why that happened, and one of them was art. I wrote novels and short stories and poetry for decades, and I knew it wasn't all me. But here's the funny thing. I've always been really fascinated with psychology, specifically depth psychology and Jungian analyst psychology. And I'm like, okay, well, it's my unconscious then, right? It's my unconscious. That is when I write something and something comes up, oh yeah, that's not God. That's my unconscious. That's me. And I've read about the unconscious. And I'm fascinated through the works of Robert A. Johnson and James Hollis, the different schools of Jungian analytic thought afterwards, the generations, the classes and stuff. I can't really put into terms of like why I think there's more than just your unconscious, that there's a more out there. But there is, and I have my own reasons, and I guess that's faith, right? Anyway, long story short, to get to the point. I am embracing more of a spiritual life. And so putting on those prayer beads on the outside, not the inside, as I went to the Chicago Botanic Gardens, was a way for me to show the world all around me that I was going to a holy place, because nature is a holy place. That's the other evidence I have of a data point. I hate the word evidence and proof. Data point that there is God, that there is something more out there. That the feeling I have when I look outside to the trees, the sun, I'm internally grateful every single day that I'm alive. I love humanity. I love nature. I love art. And so this moreness, this bigness of feeling comes from that. So putting it outside instead of inside my shirt was a way of being vulnerable. And I think that's a huge lesson in what's to come up, what happens in this story that I'm talking to you today about. So I go to the gardens. It was a beautiful experience. I was my best self. And as I'm wearing these beads, I feel like I'm an ambassador for God. I'm an ambassador for that spirituality, that bigness. I'm walking around this amazing living museum, as Dorothea, the tour guide on the bus tour we took, Dorothea called it a living museum. I love that. I was my best self. I took my time. This sort of next chapter in my spirituality is two things. One is looking outward and serving, because I think that somewhere along the lines a couple weeks ago or a month ago, I realized that I had so many gifts I needed to share with the world, with men specifically, that I could not be greedy with anymore or be stingy with. I needed to, and God gave me these gifts. I needed to share them in service. And so that word service has been another, mantra on this second half journey of mine. So, in service of humanity, I went out there and I'm walking around, I'm visiting the park, and I'm looking at the trees, and I'm meditating, and I'm just being in the moment. And all the while I'm trying not to let creep in a part of me that takes things a little bit too seriously, that pulls in perfectionism and workaholism. And that's a part of me that has been struggling the last 24 hours after this event that I'm just about to tell you about. So I knew that I'd be struggling with it, who am I? I'm a spiritual man. I'm wearing beads. I'm supposed to be doing this. I was sort of play acting. I felt a little bit disingenuous. So every now and then when I got a little bit too serious, I realized it's okay. Let go. Let go into the moment. Let go into presence. This is where God's at. You don't have to be godly. You can help yourself by being more attentive and patient and compassionate with people. But I felt this was a struggle, and I knew it early on. Anyway, at the end of the day, I went to the train station. And as I'm walking onto the platform of the Metro, and I make a right, I see a young black man lying on the ground. He had a bag by him. He looked relatively well dressed, considering he's lying on the ground. And I walk right by him, wearing my prayer beads. An ambassador of God, right? And I looked around to see if anyone was reacting. No, they weren't. Somebody must have tried to help him or wake him up or something. Would I be the fool that would do as everyone else had done, right? To come down and shake him and go, hey, would he attack me? There was a number of reasons why it was okay for me to pass him by. Those are called boundaries. And it's important. Brene Brown talks about this when she was on she was on a podcast. I forgot his name, but she talked about how she interviewed some of the most spiritual people in the world, and they all mentioned that it was boundaries. It was boundaries. That you need to have ironclad boundaries to be very spiritual and compassionate. So that was a moment of that. You can't go up to every person lying on the street and ask them what's wrong or to try to help them. You'll be inundated. You'll be burned out, right? And the city teaches you this. As Ani DeFranco once sang, I remember the first time I walked past a homeless person, and she sang this in her song, this is not right. So I felt that it's not rightness. And it gnawed at me. And that was it. But I felt like a phony. I didn't take my beads off. I forgot my beads were on until I jumped on the train. And the train sat there for about 10, 12 minutes. And I don't know why, but I'd like to believe it was because the staff of the train was trying to rouse this young man, or maybe call the police department, the ambulance or something. Why didn't I help him? Why did I walk past? And if I'm to be on this spiritual path, if I really am to help myself, I can't keep on walking past people. I wish I can give every single person that needs it $1 million, $10, but then I'd be poor, and then I'd be on the street. You don't see this as much in the suburbs. It's there, but it's not every day. I take the red line. I've been taking the red line for 23 years. I've been walking the streets of Chicago. Since 2003. And you build a wall to keep yourself safe. You don't rush towards the danger. You don't rush towards the obvious pain and suffering because you feel like you'll be swallowed up. I'm getting deep here, but that's kind of what I do. One of the things that I think I'll be changing in my coaching business and my business of life in general is working as a depth and meaning guide. That's the title I came up with. I don't know if I'll be sticking with it. A men's depth and meaning guide, but it all stems from my own experience in my own life, so that my spiritual life and my work life and my play life, everything is all one thing. It's split into different selves, but it's under a canopy of this. There's no point to this video. I just wanted to hit record, and I wanted this to be a lot more. And thank you for your patience, by the way. This is a long one. You may not get through it all the way. I don't know. But I wanted to talk about it, and I want to show up spontaneously to these things. I wasn't going to do one today. I'm like, I'm not really prepared. I didn't feel like it. But I thought it would be cruel to give you a video last week and not one this week. And I want to continue making these videos. I don't know what this is going to be. I don't know who I'm talking to or what's going on sometimes, in that more playful way of like, I don't know what I'm doing, because no one knows what they're doing. I guess the point in the video is that the lesson I've learned really is that I do the best that I can, and that's all that I can do. And the very fact that my limited belief or my negative voice, I don't like to call him negative because he's not negative, he's trying to protect me, my voice, my negative voice, but my inner critic hasn't come up in a while. And it's interesting that he has now, because now there's these waves of, you're not good, you're not worthy of God, you're not, see, look, you didn't even help that man, you're not going to help anybody. These are the waves of things I feel in this morning, and I'm at a better place now. Thank God for therapy, thank God for friends, thank God for this, thank God for automatic writing and worry journals and all that other stuff. But I understand too that I can sit with these voices. I can sit with this critic and go, I did the best that I can do. And I'll always do the best that I can do. So I think that's the lesson that I've learned. And maybe you've had a similar experience, and Maybe you felt like you failed in your life somehow as a father, as a brother, as a son, or as a worker. And I just want to say that you don't have to sit with that. That's not true. That even though it feels true, it's not true. You did your best. You did the best you can do at that moment. And so keep on doing the best you can. And give yourself a lot more credit. Give yourself a lot more compassion and grace, just like I am today. I made this video because I want it to be spontaneous. Spontaneous acts from a noble heart, as Joseph Campbell once put it, about the Grail story. And maybe I'll talk about the Grail one day, probably, because I like the Grail story. Anyway, thanks for listening. Thanks for being here the whole time. I hope you got something out of this, and I will talk to you next week.